So, Gary, Gary and Zainal, like, how are you both recruiting young people into sports in this day and age?
For swimming, we have a very big pot of athletes. When I say big pot, it's still a very small comparison towards the countries of US. US and China, where tons of athletes come through and they have, we're talking about our population is only, maybe right now we have registered swimmers of maybe about 3,000 registered swimmers. In US, it's almost 1 million.
Oh, wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, and then the expectations, of course, are varying as well, right? Like, where I feel the biggest pressure is actually when we go to big Commonwealth Games, SEA Games, Asian Games, Olympic Games, where we have to step up against the bigger countries with a wealth of numbers. And for us, what we try to do is actually create systems. So that's why we established the National Training Centre in 2015 to enable our athletes to actually find a pathway from their clubs into this program to be able to follow through into the national team as well. So we are very systems-based kind of sport where we have actually built a pathway for all the clubs to actually veer their athletes into the National Training Centre. Some clubs choose to maybe not participate in that, which is also fair enough because they feel that they have their own pathways. We are just trying to reinvent the wheel to be able to give an athlete an option, or the club an option, who they know that they cannot take their athletes past a certain level. They can actually pursue it and bring their kids into that space and be enabled to actually reach at the higher standard as well.
Yeah.
And within the National Training Centre, there's so much support given. We're talking about sports science, the sports science support. We're talking about the athlete services, where we help you chart your number of years, and we chart your pathway all the way up to university, even job placements as well. And I think these were unheard of for a very long time, even during, I would say during my swimming career. It was just, you start to hear pockets of that, but that was when I was already in US and they already started this like 20 odd years ago. But this is something that is starting to come into fruition in Singapore now. And now this is the time that we're starting to make the changes.
Yeah.
But with that, like what Zainal said, we are investing more money into the sports. We got to try to invest, but knowing that investment is actually paid up for the long run, rather than actually the short-term gains. We are looking at people like where KenU came from. I cannot comment too much, but when I talk about KenU, I talk about Joseph. A lot of them actually came from a very long line of like long-term planning as well, with their coaches as well as their. It was very little involvement of how it actually, money was invested into it, but then, that's where we started to see the results at the end of the tunnel. But what I'm trying to say is, don't expect when money is put in, the results to come out.
Exactly.
Because this is actually, we got to be very mindful of that. The results will come out eventually, because when you build proper systems in place, that's when you start to see the results change as well. If your systems don't change, and you don't, being mindful, systems don't just involve the national associations, it involves the schools, it involves the parents, education of parents. So it's actually a tripartite kind of partnership.
Yeah. So Zainal, Gary talked about the long-term planning needed for sports to grow, right? But I understand with squash, the future is a little bit challenging. Can you talk to us about what's happening?
Okay, with the current association led by Patrick Teo, I think so they have done a great job, of course, with the Association of Sports SG as well. They are now having, a team of staff that involves promotion, administration, and coaching staff. And actually, pulling all the talents and working with all the academies in Singapore. Because at the moment now, we are very dependent on the academies. Not really dependent, but these are the best way to work with, because squash courts are also very limited. And the academies that is working, I think so it will be just right. And we are working with about 6 or 7 academies, some schools, and it has actually started producing a lot of young talents, that the association has been working at the same time. Also, Sports SG also doing introduction of squash. to various centers. So, you know, it has shows a lot. In fact, 3 weeks last month, we had the Asian Juniors comprising about 30 countries. And actually Singapore Juniors did pretty well. Well, I should say very well. First, the under 13, they came in the quarterfinals. The under 15 girls was in the quarterfinals, and the under 19 boys in the quarterfinals. And despite that, you know, with limitations and whatever, I think so they have performed very, very well.
Yeah.
So, and we look at it now with the structured training, you know. But of course, the challenging part is right now, we actually very reliant on the Kallang Squash Centre.
On the Kallang Squash Centre, you train at that centre.
And we do not actually have a base because that is a public centre. And as you're aware, by end 23 or early 24, that place will be taken up. And we, till today, I think so the association do not know where will be the next centre.
Oh, you don't know when the next centre or where it will be?
No, because so far, I think so, from the information that I get so far, there's nothing yet. But of course, they have put proposal. The president has put up about the plans wanting to have a 3-story building that could house everything, you know. So from the center, strength conditioning, and whatever that what Gary mentioned, how a center, you know,
has to
is
be
being set up. Yeah. So because as it is now, we actually do not have our own center.
Oh my goodness.
And we have only now about 20 over public courts. And we are looking at only about a few places. We don't have even in the area like West Jurong. There's nothing. In Tampines, I mean, sadly, there's Tampines Hub, there's Bedok Sports Complex, there's no squash courts, you know. And the latest one is 2 at Bishan Stadium. Very lucky that we got 2 squash courts. But further than that, there's nothing else. Even we have 2 squash players that was with the sports school, and one is Aoyong Wayan, who is doing very well academically and now has gone to, if I'm not, is Bristol University. And the sister now, Aoyong Wayan, is there. But there's no squash courts.
Oh, how does it make you feel? Like, what does the future feel like for you, knowing that there's a lack of support?
Well, I think the squash community here is very strong, and they are very active. Even they don't have the chance to get to the public, but rest assured that the residential courts are heavily used. Of course, as you're aware that, you know, squash courts built 30 years ago with a brick wall will not be very popular. Not because people don't like to play squash, but the squash courts are not really that kind of squash court that you see now. Now you see with the glass court that you could see through. But if you're going to go in a place that look like a wall, it does not create an environment. So that's the only problem, because those courts that are built 20, 25 years ago, but those courts that are built with the glass courts, I believe they are always very, very busy. In the club now, if you go to places like Tangling Club, American Club, you know, those like even Warren Golf Club and the private club, British Club or Dutch Club, the squash court is heavily booked. Singapore Cricket Club, you know, so Singapore Swimming Club, Chinese Swimming Club.
Actually, you know, like I feel for Zainal. I think a lot of them, we face a bit of a similar issue. Even though we talk about pool space everywhere, there's apparently, we are one of the, I would say, blessed countries to have as many swimming pools as well, right? But the thing is the accessibility, the usability towards actually using it for a training facility, making it a training facility. How often is it actually utilized down that path? It's a lot to do with a lot of recreational players. I play squash on a recreational level. I mean, I'm not great, but I play squash. And
it's a fantastic sport.
It's a great sport, and I think that they are limited. The unfortunate thing is that they are limited by the amount of space that is actually used for specific training purposes as well, where they can actually build out a system. And I feel for Zainal, because by losing a space, you know, you diminish a chance to actually influence another wider community as well. So.
So Carson, do you think there are enough facilities to conduct your coaching sessions in Singapore?
For me, I conduct fun tennis classes. Most of the time, I will go to the residence of the host, right? And if they don't have any tennis courts, we'll just play in the public courts. So, fortunately for us, tennis courts are quite freely available. Yeah, and you really have to book your tennis courts 3 weeks in advance.
I guess for recreation, it's like if you get space, you get space. If you don't, you don't. You know, practice still goes on next week, right? But I'm assuming that when you're training for a national game, you don't have that next week. Next week could be the day you need to fly off to the Philippines or whatever, right?
Not only that, Sharda, actually, you know, having a center by itself, it encompasses many things. You can plan, you can straight away decide, and you know that your strength and conditioning center is there, maybe the medical center is there, where you can just say, you go here, you go there. Now you train in the morning, but now if we're going to train in the morning, we have to make sure that, you know, the coach is available, or maybe there is something else going on.
Yeah.
But having our own training center, we know that, okay, you can go one in the court, you can go instead of sharing, because that is something you need to do skills. So you do imaginative squash for yourself for 1 hour. So they can split in 10 person to 10 courts rather than, you know, 3 courts with 10 people. Even though you can do that, but actually it's not very effective. But of course it's better than not having a court. Our booking also are limited. But if we have a player who says that I want to train in the morning, I want to train from 9 to 12 o'clock, she can have the court, because the court belongs to us. But if some of them who comes at 9 o'clock, by 11 o'clock they have to stop, because
Yes, it's open to public.
Yeah.
so this is the thing. But if sharing, maybe I want to train at 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, do my skills. But I don't want to train in the evening, I want to come at 2 o'clock because I want to do this. So in between, then I do just 1 hour, I rest at the center. Okay, in the evening at 7 o'clock, I want to do my games. You know, so there's many things that can be planned, can be put around, you know, within the center.
Yeah.
And instead of spending 2 hours, I can spend 5 hours. You know, how much more that I could get.
Yeah.
You know, same like the pool,
yeah.
you know.
I mean, Sharda, definitely we don't want to deprive the public of the usage of space as well. The public also needs to be educated. If you want your sportsmen to actually reach a certain level, let's give them the full support. Let's put in the support for them to know that this space, you know, we are letting you guys just have the free reign, go ahead and just train there 24/7, utilize it 24/7, rather than actually just thinking about just purely a space where it's it has to strike a balance between the recreational side, and then you think about all these activities, and by the time you actually look at the main thing that you want to put in, like a competitive team, you kind of like where do they fit in? They become the last priority. You know, space is a constraint in Singapore for sure, but we have a lot of pools. We have a lot of tennis courts.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have enough squash courts. But I really feel that we can work something around it to be able to enable sports to thrive in a much better ecosystem, where we can have every single person going into a sport for a specific reason to be happily satisfied.
Yeah.